Hi, I'm Keith LeBou. Welcome to Stuffsmith Studios here in Sydney. I'd like to talk with you about my love of tools and what got me into it. I had been making work for about 7 years, or 8 years, almost 8 years, using only about 15 tools in my palette. I had a toolbox with a hardware store hammer, a regular lineman's pliers, similar to this one, just your regular hardware store plier, and just a couple other, some screwdrivers and a saw, and I made a tremendous amount of work using only those very, very simple tools. And at that point, my passion wasn't particularly for the tool itself, it was for what it was, it was as an enabler to be able to get done what I needed to have happen. It wasn't until I started learning about different metalsmithing techniques that my real appreciation and love for tools started to grow. And I started to get a deepening understanding of the tools themselves, what they were good for, and a bit about their history. And it brought a lot more richness to the making for me. And a perfect place to start is by showing you my favorite tool, which also happened to be my first jeweler's tool. At the time I got it, I was in an antique store in Coscob, Connecticut, and was walking through the store and saw this sitting on a table, and minus this little wrap of metal around the handle, and I saw it sitting there. It was $8. I was like, that's a really cool hammer. It's beautiful. I have no idea what it is. I could tell it was old. There's a maker's mark on it. I knew it had some real history, and obviously had gotten a lot of use from the way that the hammerhead was worn. So I bought it and I brought it home and just kept it on a shelf. This was way before I ever made a piece of jewelry. This was probably 6 or 7 years before I ever touched a piece of jewelry. Later, once I started doing this metalsmithing, I realized that what I had was a Victorian's watchmaker's riveting hammer, and a very specific tool to make tiny rivets in my materials. And the balance of this tool, the way it feels in my hand, the distance between the hammerhead and the handle, the slight springiness of the metal part of this handle, it all combines to give this tool an incredibly intuitive and correct feeling in my hand. It's very much an extension of my hand when I work with it. Little did I know when I got this tool, just out of the visual interest, that it would become my favorite tool in my toolkit. It's quite a beautiful object. Now it's got this very, very small face for hitting. It's got a chisel end on the back, which is another part of the riveting technique, and this beautiful lathe-turned handle, which over the years split out, and I just wrapped it with this wire. One of the reasons that I wrapped it like this, rather than try to glue it and clamp it to disguise the fact that it cracked, brings me to another reason that I am so fond of tools that have got history to them. Back before the industrial age got into full swing, we didn't live in a disposable culture. If something broke, you didn't just throw it out. You would go down, let's say that this scissor handle broke. You'd go down to the local smithy and he would braze the handle together like this to repair the tool, so you could then go on and keep using it. Now, this struck me one day as I was working in my studio looking at these scissors, that on this inanimate object here is a visual record of several people's involvement with this tool, just sitting there. We've got these are handmade scissors. Okay, these are I believe they're German scissors. They've got a maker's mark on them. They're very finely made by the maker. So we have his hand on it. Now we have the hand of the person who'd been using these scissors quite a bit, which tends to round some of the really, really sharper edges off from repeated fingers going in and out, and the wear of the blades as they start to wear down over time. Then we have the hand of the person who repaired the tool. So we've got 3 people tied up in this tool, and when I take a tool like this and start working with it, it gives it real energy and meaning for me to be able to use it and lend my hand to it, lend the 4th or more. Maybe this has gone through several people already before it got to me. So I'm the latest in a line of people, and hopefully this will go on to someone else when I'm not using it. And I love that about the tool being an implement that's an extension of the person's hand who's using it, but also it is it's cared for so that use can continue. It's one of the things I just love about tools. My dream was always to have a workshop in which all the tools would be antique tools. They like that part.
Come on, get lost, yeah, you bum.
Are those babies?
I think it's the minor birds who are.
Yeah, they are minor.
Yeah, minor birds are trying to get the nests of other local birds.
Oh,
they want the eggs.
Another of the things that I really love in discerning and having a visual record of the history of these tools are the marks that the owners would make to sign them, to mark that they belong to them. So here's a beautiful old rawhide mallet, and it's been drilled with somebody's initials. Bit hard to make out exactly what the initials are. I think it's T-E or T-F, something like that. But it's, it's just this beautiful little patterning on the side of it that just shows me that somebody really cared about this hammer to keep it so that nobody else would get to it. So, of course, when it makes its way to me through a flea market or wherever I end up getting it, then I'll flip it over and I'll put my own initials on it as well, so that of course I'll have to leave some area for a future person to be able to carve their initials on it, and it becomes like a tree. It becomes like tree bark, where you see all of these people who've signed it over the years, and you get a bit of history. Some of the graffiti on a tree has been grown over and is barely there, or is quite organically worked into the tree, whereas some of it is very freshly scratched. There is that layer of age to the tools. I love that about these tools. And other interesting things are when somebody gifts me with a lovely tool. This is a very, very, very fine French watchmaker's hammer, riveting hammer again. And it was given to me by a student whose grandfather used it as a jeweler, and his name was P.I. Crumb. And so I wrote that down when she gave me this tool, and came home and etched P.I. Crumb into a little plate on the side of there, and then on the flip side etched my own name on there, so that this little tool, I'm always remembering that there was this jeweler whose granddaughter lived on through my workshops. So I've got that family history running through this tool already that I've come in contact with, and then by putting my own name to it, I think pays homage to this to this man who owned this lovely little hammer, and hopefully I'll be able to make as good little rivets as he did. So this tool here that I was just speaking about, this very meaningful watchmaker's hammer, is sharing space here with a hammer I made in direct homage to that first tool that I had. This was a riveting hammer that I made out of all found materials. I had gotten one of these beautiful old similar vintage riveting hammers on eBay, and then went about making the handle for it, twisting up some wire using a turning screw and some plumbing hardware and a thumbtack, and just doing a bunch of pieces on there to try to give that that same kind of feeling of integrity in the weight and the method that the tool will work, but also having it be kind of in my signature found object format. Another handmade hammer, this one with twisted wire and an ice pick handle. And it even still says on here, air condition your food. That's pre-refrigerator technology there. With any tool, at the end of the day, the key to using it well is to understand the tool, to understand what it can do, and to test the parameters of what it can do, and to use it safely, to be able to do it safely. All of those things combined are going to allow you to work with a tool and maximize the potential of that particular tool. My Tools of the Trade class focuses specifically on this, on taking some of these very basic use tools like our drills and our jeweler's saw, things like the very, very staple tools at a workbench, and being able to really go into detail about what it is that we're doing with them and what it is they will and will not like to do, and to do it in the safest possible way for your work and for yourself. That's really the ticket for this workshop. It's a workshop I've been teaching for about 8 or 9 years. I've been teaching these techniques for about 15 years now, but this is the first time, about 8 years ago, I started focusing a class specifically on just the tools. And I have found across the board, people who listen to the information that's provided in these workshops, people are constantly coming up to me and saying, wow, I've been using that tool for years and nobody has ever really explained it in the way that you have. Once you understand the tool that you're using and you become comfortable with it and you get over any fear or trepidation about using that particular tool, it becomes an extension of your hand. And by it becoming an extension of your hand, it also allows your creativity to expand and to bloom. The more tools you have at the ready that you're comfortable with using, the more quickly and directly you can create, and you can make the things that you have an idea for in your head. A lot of times people can buy 1 million tools to start out before they've done a lot of work, and then they have a tool for each purpose and they have to find a use for them, and that can be a bit of a drag, and it can actually be intimidating to have all these tools at the ready, tools and materials at the ready, and then try to find a way to use them. I find that using a few tools and really getting to know them and understand them is going to open up your knowledge and your skill level, so that when a new tool is presented to you, you'll often have an application ready to go for it, which is a good way to go. A lot of this information is not stuff that you get out of a manual. Matter of fact, a lot of these tools don't have a very good manual to go by. So it's an experiential learning situation when you get some of these tools in your hand. And this is why a lot of the information that I give is not your standard, this is how one uses the tool out of a manual. It's actual practical information about how to deal with these particular materials that you may be using. So come take advantage of my 23 years of trial and error experience at the bench and get those tools out of the drawer and bring them onto your workspace and watch the possibilities start to arise.